the refugee protest that is planned in Sydney for tomorrow. There's the Black Lives Matter protest that is planned for tonight. You were very strong on this last weekend, but it's gone largely ignored from the protesters' point of view anyway. So what's your view of protesters who are planning to protest this weekend?
My view hasn't changed. People should not attend mass protests in the middle of a pandemic. Going to these sorts of events puts lives and livelihoods at risk. I mean, we are here fighting to avoid a second wave of infections, which would literally kill people, which would literally kill jobs. I mean, the OECD put a report out earlier this week which showed that if we had a second wave of infections, it would cost our economy about $80 billion over the next 2 years. I mean, so there's a clear... I mean, we are in the middle of a health emergency, and this is not over. And people who choose to attend those rallies are putting the lives and the jobs of their fellow Australians at risk.
Should protesters be charged?
Well, the rules should be applied equally to everyone. I mean, that is unequivocally, the rules should be applied equally to everyone. If it's good enough for people to be prevented to go to funerals, to church, to sporting events, to all sorts of things, restaurants, then of course the rules should apply to everyone else. It makes absolutely no sense to have tens of thousands of people gather, with potentially infected people among them, spreading the risk of the virus, putting the community at unacceptable, unnecessary, and entirely avoidable risk.
So that's
entirely avoidable risk.
So that's a yes. They should be charged.
Well, of course. I mean, they should be charged if that is what the rules provide in any particular circumstance.
What if it's found that some of these protesters, Minister, are on job seeker? Should they lose that entitlement?
Look, the rules should be applied equally to everyone. My message to people that are considering attending these mass protests: don't do it. Reflect on your responsibilities to your fellow Australians. You choosing to go to a mass protest puts the lives and the jobs of your fellow Australians at risk. It puts the lives and livelihoods of your fellow Australians at risk.
But what if it's found that some of these protesters who are ignoring these rules are on job seeker? Should they lose that entitlement?
Well, look, I mean, that is a conversation that would be worthwhile having. But right now, it's up to the states. It's up to the states to impose the rules that they inflict on everybody else for good reasons, that are inflicted on everybody else, that Australians comply with in order to help us get rid of this, suppress the spread of this virus, and indeed in order to minimise the risk of a second wave.
But what's your personal view on that? Should they lose that entitlement?
I don't have personal views on these matters. We have a government position. People should comply with the rules, and the rules should be applied to all equally. And to the extent that people breach the rules, then the penalties that are, of course, that are available should be applied.
OK, just on to the border wars, Minister, at the moment. The Queensland Premier has kind of softened her stance in the last couple of days. She says that the Queensland border may be open by the 10th of July, which comes after the school holidays. Is that good enough?
Well, look, the state borders should be opened as soon as possible. Certainly, I'm sure that tourism operators in North Queensland would like to be able to draw on tourists out of New South Wales, for example. And, I think that the Premier of Queensland would be harming the businesses in her state if she didn't move on this more swiftly.
OK, so
I mean, how can she let 30,000 people protest in Brisbane and then say to tourism operators in North Queensland, no, you can't have tourists from New South Wales come into this state?
Are the premiers arrogant?
Look, I mean, the premiers have worked very hard. The governments at all levels here in Australia have worked very hard to get on top of this. And, clearly moving into the next phase comes with its risks and comes with its issues. And I think we're working through all of these issues as a country. I'm not going to start attacking people personally. I mean, I think that everybody's trying to do their best. But these are legitimate conversations for us to have.
Some people have accused the government of a contradiction in terms here. While the government is against these protests taking place this weekend, they are pushing for interstate travel, which, you know, could in turn spread the disease as well. Do you see a contradiction there?
That is not, well, no, that is not inconsistent at all. I mean, 30,000 people in one location is a very different proposition from allowing people subject to proper social distancing and you know, proper hygiene practices and compliance with all of the rules. You know, move you know, in smaller groups, you know, across the state border. I mean, I think there's a world of difference having 30,000 people potentially exposed even to just a small number of infected people, which can then spread the virus rapidly, to having you know, small numbers of people in compliance with the rules attend tourism or hospitality venues across the state border.
Would you be for Australians to start picking up the bills for their hotel bills when they're in quarantine?
Well, I mean, that's something that's being discussed this morning. I think it's a legitimate conversation. You know, clearly, you know, we do need to now move into a more ongoing set of arrangements. I mean, we dealt with the crisis. We put in place temporary transitional arrangements. And now it's going to be a matter of moving into an ongoing arrangement that is sustainable over a longer period. And so in that context, no doubt, National Cabinet will make relevant decisions today.
OK, just a couple of quick ones before I let you go. So will JobKeeper remain in every sector, in every other sector, until the end of September?
Well, we've been very clear. JobKeeper will remain until the end of September. There's a review underway by Treasury, which may or may not make recommendations about desirable adjustments. We can't preempt what Treasury's review may or may not suggest. And you know, once we receive that review, we'll consider its findings and its recommendations, and we'll make relevant decisions at that time. But as all of us have said consistently all the way through, JobKeeper will remain until the end of September.
Well, is there a chance, though, that some other sectors might lose some entitlements before the review?
Yeah. That is not something that's in front of us, but Treasury is currently conducting a review, and once we've received that review, its findings and its recommendations, we'll make judgments on the way forward, but JobKeeper will be in place until the end of September. OK, just,
would you consider keeping JobSeeker above $40 a day as an incentive for taking up cashless cards?
Look, I've seen that suggestion made by my valued friend and colleague Rowan Ramsey, but look, I mean, we are clearly now having conversations on how we can most appropriately transition out of the high levels and the elevated levels of temporary support, including through the enhanced job seeker program. And I mean, the COVID supplement, which effectively doubles the job seeker payment, is there for a limited period, for a 6-month period, and it's due to come to an end towards the end of September, and you know, we're currently discussing on how best to transition into the longer-term arrangements.
OK, and Minister, just finally, as a European Australian, I just want to get your thoughts on this trend at the moment, removing statues, pulling statues down of various historic figures, not just in the UK, also in the US, now a push to take some of them down here in Australia.
Well, look, I mean, you know, I don't think that we should be retrospectively censoring our history. There's good and bad in everybody's history. There's good and bad in our history. We should celebrate the good. We should reflect and learn from the bad, and we should strive to be the best we can be moving forward. And I don't think it is desirable to try and retrospectively censor your history.